It was the dead of winter in 2015, the kind of night when the air bites at your face and the cold seeps straight into your bones. Denver winters had always been brutal, but that year the snow seemed endless. The streets downtown were slick with ice, and every breath I exhaled turned instantly to fog. That night I left a club earlier than usual. The bass from the speakers was still pounding in my chest when I stepped outside, but the freezing air sobered me quickly. My friends had decided to stay behind, but I didn't feel like drinking anymore. I was restless, maybe even a little uneasy. Although I couldn't explain why, the streets were mostly empty. Just a few taxis circling the blocks, groups of strangers laughing loudly, and the occasional homeless man huddled near a building vent for warmth. I tugged my jacket tighter around me, but it was no use. Walking home in that cold wasn't an option. I pulled out my phone and opened the Rideshare app I'd been using for months. Driving wasn't an option for me anymore. A legal mess, something I'd rather not talk about, had cost me my license, and since then I'd been at the mercy of strangers behind the wheel. Most of the time it worked fine. Sometimes awkward, sometimes silent, but always uneventful. That night, the name Ethan popped up on my screen. The profile picture caught me off guard. Unlike most drivers who smiled, his face was blank, almost hostile. He wore a dark beanie pulled low over his forehead and a thick beard that covered half his face. His eyes were shadowed, almost unreadable. Something about it sent a chill down my spine, but he was just 3 minutes away. The cold pushed me to press confirm. A silver Toyota Camry pulled up a few minutes later, headlights dim, paint chipped in places. The car looked older than the ones I usually rode in. I hesitated for a moment, standing on the curb, but then the passenger light flicked on and I climbed in. The interior smelled faintly of cigarettes and something metallic, like rust. The seats were torn in places. The air inside was heavy, suffocating. Ethan didn't greet me. Didn't even glance back. He kept both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Finally, in a low, raspy whisper, he asked, "Where are you headed?" I gave him my address, expecting him to tap it into his GPS like every other driver did. But he didn't. He didn't even touch his phone. He just nodded once, slowly, and pulled away from the curb. Almost immediately, I noticed something was off. He turned down a street that wasn't the fastest way to my neighborhood. I leaned forward slightly and said, "I think you need to take a left up ahead. It's quicker." He didn't answer right away. His knuckles tightened around the wheel. Finally, he muttered, almost casually, "Don't worry. I'll give you a discount. Just need to make a quick stop first." A cold weight dropped into my stomach. That's when I saw it, the handgun. It wasn't fully tucked away. The barrel jutted out from the glove compartment, gleaming under the dim dashboard lights. My mouth went dry. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. I tried to stay calm, tried not to breathe too fast. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe he was just careless, maybe... But deep down I knew. We passed under a red traffic light. I tested the back door handle as quietly as I could. It didn't budge. My fingers fumbled for the lock, but then I saw it. The small switch flipped downward. The child lock was on. My pulse spiked. He had locked me in. I looked out the window. The bright neon lights of downtown Denver had faded. We were on a long stretch of road lined with trees, snow piled high on either side. No houses, no gas stations, just silence and darkness. I slid slowly across the seat, moving behind him. If I could just reach the child lock switch, maybe I had a chance. My breathing felt ragged, too loud in the silence. He hadn't noticed yet. We stopped at another red light. My hand trembled as I reached forward, fingers brushing the small lever near his seat. Suddenly, his voice cut through the silence, harsh and sharp. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He whipped his head around, eyes blazing, and in one terrifying motion, his hand darted toward the glove box. Adrenaline surged through me. I yanked the lock up and shoved the door open. Cold air rushed in as I tumbled out, hitting the icy pavement hard. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted into the street, my boots slipping on the frozen ground. Headlights from a black SUV bore down on me. Desperate, I waved my arms, pounding on the driver's window. "Help me, please!" The driver's wide eyes met mine for a second. Then he accelerated, swerving past me. Gone. I spun around, heart hammering, expecting the silver Camry to be right behind me. But it wasn't. The street was empty, silent. He had vanished. Shaking, gasping, I ran toward the only light I could see, a 24-hour grocery store glowing in the distance. I burst inside, collapsing against the carts near the entrance. The cashier stared at me like I was insane. "Call me a taxi," I begged. My voice cracked, my hands still shaking. I didn't even bother explaining until later. When I finally calmed down, I reported the driver through the app. They promised to escalate it, to contact the police. Days passed. Then a week. One evening, a uniformed officer knocked on my door. He asked me to describe Ethan, to recall everything I could. I told him about the beard, the beanie, the gun. He scribbled notes, nodded gravely, and left. I never heard from him again. For months afterward, I couldn't sleep properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that profile photo, those cold, shadowed eyes. I imagined what would have happened if I hadn't unlocked that door in time, and I swore from that night on I would never, ever step into a rideshare again. Even now, years later, whenever I see a silver Camry on a dark road, my chest tightens. My friends laugh and tell me to move on, but they weren't there. They didn't hear that voice, didn't see that gun, didn't feel the locks clicking shut. Some nightmares don't fade with time, and this one rides with me still. A few years after my terrifying brush as a passenger, life had shifted in unexpected ways. My license was back, and for extra income, I decided to drive for a rideshare service myself. Irony, right? I had once sworn never to use one again, and now I was on the other side of the wheel. At first, it wasn't bad. Most of my passengers were harmless. Business people in suits glued to their phones, college students headed to parties, or tired workers grateful for a quiet ride home. Some nights were even fun. I got good ratings, earned tips, and the flexibility worked with my schedule. But one night in the middle of winter, everything changed. It was a Friday evening, the air crisp and heavy with snow clouds. I had just fueled up my new Honda Accord, a car I was proud of, reliable and clean. Business was steady. The bars downtown were packed, and the app kept pinging with requests. Around 10 p.m., a ride request popped up from a shopping center a few miles away. The name on the screen, Sam. When I pulled into the lot, I noticed a group of teenagers hanging out near the closed storefronts, their laughter echoing in the cold air. But none of them matched the name. Then I saw him. An older man detached himself from the shadows near a lamppost. He moved slowly, deliberately, each step steady but unnerving. His shoulders were hunched beneath a long coat, and his face was pale, eyes unreadable. I rolled down the window slightly. "Are you Sam?" I asked. He gave a short nod. No smile, no words. Then, without hesitation, he opened the back door. Not the seat diagonally behind the passenger, like most riders, but the one directly behind me. That small detail always set me on edge. It meant I couldn't see them clearly, unless I glanced at the mirror. I forced a smile, trying to stay professional. "All right, Sam, let's get you where you need to go." The app showed the ride would be about 10 miles, mostly out of town. At first, I thought nothing of it. People requested remote destinations all the time, but the farther we drove, the heavier the air in the car became. He smelled strongly of cigarettes, the kind that clings to clothes for years. Every time I tried to make small talk, he responded with one-word answers or silence. "Cold night, huh? Nothing. You live out this way?" Just a grunt. But then I noticed something that made my skin prickle. Each time I flicked my eyes to the rearview mirror, his gaze was locked on me. Not casually, not absently. He was staring, directly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I pressed a little harder on the gas, hoping the ride would end quicker. A few miles later, my stomach dropped. The GPS highlighted the final stretch, a dead-end road surrounded by woods. No houses, no stores, just blackness. My gut screamed at me. Something wasn't right. As we neared the turn, I deliberately drove past it. "Sorry about that," I said lightly. "Think I missed it. I'll turn around." That's when his demeanor snapped. "Turn around," he barked, his voice sharp, cutting through the silence. It wasn't a request. It was a command. My throat went dry. Of course, I muttered, forcing a nervous laugh. I slowed, made a U-turn, and headed back. But my right hand slid down toward the center console, where I kept a small knife. My father had insisted I carry it when I started driving strangers around. At the time, I thought it was paranoid. Now it felt like the only lifeline I had. The car rolled onto the dark road, the headlights cutting through the trees on either side. The world outside was empty, silent, suffocating. Not a single house light, not a single sign of life. Just snow and forest, my fingers wrapped tightly around the knife handle, hidden from his view. My pulse hammered in my ears. We drove deeper until finally the road ended. I shifted the car into park. That's when he spoke again, his voice soft this time, almost polite. "Thanks for the ride," he said slowly. Then, after a pause, "One more thing. Could you step out and help me with my bag? I've got a bad back." Every nerve in my body screamed. I glanced in the mirror. His hands were empty. There was no bag. My grip tightened on the knife. "Sorry, man," I forced a shaky laugh. "Company rules. Can't really step out during rides. Liability issues, you know." Silence. Then, without warning, his body lunged forward. His arms wrapped around my neck from behind, squeezing with terrifying force. I gasped, my vision blurring instantly. My hands clawed at his grip, desperate for air. His breath was hot against my ear, his strength shocking for someone his age. My chest burned, my thoughts spiraling into panic. Instinct took over. I yanked the knife free and stabbed blindly behind me. The blade sank into his arm. A guttural scream erupted in the car. His grip loosened and he fell backward, clutching his wound. Blood darkened his sleeve, dripping onto the seat. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires spun on the icy road before catching traction, and the car shot forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw him tumble out of the open door, rolling into the snow. His scream echoed once, then was swallowed by the night. I drove like a madman, heart pounding, breath ragged, eyes darting to every shadow. The black woods eventually gave way to the glow of streetlights, and only then did I slow down, shaking violently. I pulled into a gas station, parking under the fluorescent lights, hands still trembling around the wheel. For a long time I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My chest ached from where he had gripped me. My throat felt raw. Should I call the police? Report what happened? My phone sat heavy in my pocket, but I couldn't bring myself to dial. Fear rooted me in place. What if they didn't believe me? What if somehow this came back on me? In the end, I drove home in silence, parked my car and sat in the dark for hours. That was the last night I ever drove for a rideshare company. The money wasn't worth it. The risks weren't worth it. Even now, years later, sometimes I wake in the middle of the night convinced I feel phantom hands tightening around my throat. I avoid back roads. I avoid picking up strangers even when I give friends a ride, because I know what can happen in the shadows of an empty road, and I know what it feels like to have death breathing down your neck from the back seat.